Hello and merry meet. This is High Priestess Tehila from the Coven of the Open Mind, and you're watching Wicca 101 Abridged. Hail and welcome. The topic this time covers altar setups and variations, an important step in defining your own personal practice. I'd like to teach this video by recording myself actually setting up our coven altar for Lughnasa. We have ritual in like 2 hours, so kind of left this for last minute, but now we're going to set up the altar the way that it should look for the season, and then this is a semi-permanent altar, so it stays that way until the next season, and we do all of our indoor rituals by this altar. Some people who come and stay here will sometimes set up their own altars in other parts of the house, and we're working on setting an outdoor altar up, so eventually there'll be more than one, but for now this is like the central location for us in our coven stead. For those who don't know, and this is really important, understanding the context of why you're setting up an altar, because that'll tell you what you should put on there and where it goes. So for those who don't know, Lughnasa is a harvest festival. It's also called Lammas, or the first harvest. On this day, wheat harvest begins, and the season of sacrifice begins. It is the final holiday in the season of life. It is considered a summer holiday on a summer season, but it does mark the decline of life energy and the circle of life kind of feel of all energy having to eventually die. Even when it's at the peak of life, still you can start to see as it ages and begins to move on. For some, they see this as the beginning of the season of death, just because like it's the first harvest, and that does involve death in some regards. The theme of sacrifice is heavily imbued into into life this time of year, as this is the time of life where we must kill all of the plants and that we have sown, all of the harvest that we've sown. We must slaughter all the animals that live in our farm that we've raised and preserve them and prepare them and make it so that we can survive the coming winter. There's plenty to eat at this time, so this is a holiday of plenty. It is one of the many fasts and feasts. In traditional Wicca, all of the harvest festivals are fast and feasts. There are some Wiccans who do every holiday as a fast and feast, and there are some that don't do any fast and feast. Fast and feast just means that you fast all day from when you wake up to when you do ritual, and then you feast afterwards. Often people eat pork on this day. Some opt for chicken, but typically like livestock, like farm animals. The idea of like killing the animal, saying a blessing over the animal, thanking the animal and nature and the world for its sacrifice so that humans can continue to live and continue to prosper. For people that don't eat meat, and for people who do, there's also the theme of sacrifice coming from the harvest, from killing the crop, turning the crop into bread and then consuming that. So it's a big wheat holiday. I'm making challah, which is egg bread. It's the perfect thing for this holiday. I make it every year. And then I'm also making blueberry muffins, so berries, pies that have berries in them, wheat, mushrooms, food that uses a lot of the vegetable matter that's available at this time of year is traditional food. So it's really good stuff. The idea is that in Wicca there's the goddess and the god, right? So the goddess is in like nature, like forests and trees, and the goddess is in the water and the ground. And then the god is the hunt and the harvest. And so he's in the corn and the wheat. So that's why many people will take corn dollies and make corn dollies, or we're going to take corn husks that are currently being charged in the sun, and we're going to eat the corn on the cob for the ritual or for the feast. But for the ritual, we're going to take the corn husks and stuff them with seasoning and little bits of paper that we write blessings on, or things that we want to let go of going into this coming season, things that we're thankful for as well, things that have been sacrificed for us to be able to be happy and healthy. We write all that down and stuff it in, and then you burn it in the cauldron. So corn. Yeah. Corn is also big on Mabon, which is the second harvest that's coming up at the end of September. And that's seen as the traditional Wiccan Thanksgiving. It's more corn heavy than wheat heavy. So like this time we're having like wheat bread, but next time, and wheat beer and stuff like that, next time we'd be having more like mead, mulled wine for drinks, and then for food it'd be like cornbread and that sort of thing. So slight differences, and because of which crop is harvested at which times. So it is important to consider this background. When you're creating an altar, it should work with the energy and of the occasion. So the altar should embody what energy we're trying to capture, and remind us in this case of the season, right? Because that's the whole point of the altar, is to help us hone in on the energy that we're trying to work with, amplifying its effects on us. And for ritual, the purpose of using that energy is to to bring that energy in, to inspire us, to alter us in some way. So the altar theme is here to capture that idea of sacrifice and giving thanks. And the thanks that we feel for deity specifically because it's a Sabbath. Or, if you don't believe in deity, then think of it as the circumstances that are outside of your control. Luck, fate, whatever you want to call it. So first you have to do, so now I'm going to rotate this around so you can see the altar. So now we're going to just put things on the altar, and I'm going to explain where I'm putting it, why I'm putting it there, all that sort of stuff. So this is our altar table. It's in a corner of our house. If you look up above it, you'll see we've got a big pentagram up. This is facing to the north, so this plant is it's perfectly north. I already had my lovely assistant Vanna, Rain, who is visiting our homestead these days. She went ahead and cleaned this and swept the floor and wiped the table down, and so the space is nice and clean. The first thing that we need to do before we set anything down is, can you grab the broom by the front door? It's hanging on a peg from some twine. And so a broom, usually you hang it by a front door. If it falls, then you know that an evil spirit has crossed your threshold and means you harm. And the broom's purpose is to purify the space, to cleanse it of energy. You only need to sweep inside usually, though if I'm creating an altar outside, I'll usually sweep anyway because it can hurt. It doesn't need to be physically swept. Okay, so this is what the broom looks like. We bought it at like a fair. It's just straightforward. You don't have to physically sweep. You can if you want to, but it's the sweeping motion that matters. The idea that you're getting rid of old energy, clearing out the energy from the space. And you can't see, but I'm actually sweeping the room around the altar as well. Great, so now the altar is physically clean, it's spiritually clean, there's no lingering energy here, so we're going to go ahead and decorate it. There's a lot of people that use altar cloths because they want to protect the wood, or they think they look nice. I personally think they look a little bit cluttered or messy, so sometimes I'll use them if I'm covering a box that I'm propping something else up on, but I don't think we're going to need to do too much of that today. We'll see. So I'm going to just start by placing the depictions of deity. When you have the altar, traditionally the female side is this side over here because that's the north and the west, which are the two female polarity elements, and then the south and the east, which belong to fire and air. So this is the masculine side. So that's how we're going to do things here as well. So can you hand me the giant wicker girl with the ribbon and the small statue of Anubis? He looks like a dog. And there's also a horn inside that red velvet bag. The red velvet bag. There's a horn right there. Okay, so this is called shofar. I get this out this time of year. This is actually from traditional Judaism. The shofar is a ram's horn, and this actually I made myself. Like, they gave us the horns, and then we just cleaned them and polished them and everything. And you blow into one side, and it makes like an obnoxious sound, like I can't do it, but you practice and you can do it. And they will like sound it every single day starting this time of the year, leading up to Rosh Hashanah, which is essentially their version of the harvest. and they celebrate with similar customs and similar idea of giving thanks and that sort of thing, and that's what they consider the start of their new year. So this is a symbol of the hunt, so it's going to go part of our representation of male deity. And this is a wicker lady, and she represents the goddess because she's a lady and she's made out of wicker, which makes sense. Can I have the tall white candle? Okay, so this tall white candle is what we use to link circles in our coven. It kind of represents spirit, represents being outside of space and time, and we put it right here in the back, and we light that when we link circles with each other so that we can share energy across vast different distances. Now the red candle, please. Okay, this is another thing we're going to use to represent deity. So this is a celebration of the death of the god. So to honor the god specifically, we're going to give him a red candle. The goddess sometimes will be given a green candle, but I'm not going to do that today specifically. I'll probably put one out for the full moon, but today we're honoring the god, so he's the one that gets the candle. I also have a statue of Anubis. This is my first patron. I got this at an occult shop for like, $30. Anubis is the god whose energy is reflected at this time, the start of the season of death. So that's what his energy is aligns with, and so he's here to help preside over this time of year and help us feel at peace with the idea of things dying, because that is the way things go. Okay, so these are our representations of deity. As you can see, the goddess representation is very simple. That's again because this is not a female holiday, it's a masculine holiday. We're celebrating the death of the god. So that's why we have all of these things over here. And then as we go on, we'll add things over to the side, like a green candle and maybe some crystals and that sort of thing. So next we need to put the representation of the elements. So I need the bowl of dirt. And then there's a bowl that was upside down that had the shell. I need that again. So this is a bowl of dirt from outside. I have a necklace here. This necklace was given to me by my late boyfriend who passed away, and it was very tragic. And I still have this from when we were together, so I feel connected to the spirit world through this necklace. And so I put it in the earth jar because to me it feels like this is what grounds me to this earth, my experiences here. So this goes to represent earth up in the north corner here. Next we have a representation of air. This is the same representation that was on the altar for the previous holiday for both earth and air, but I think that they do a pretty good job of capturing the season of summer. So this is just a bowl that I'm using to prop up the very small little incense burner I have, and I burn like little bits of sage and that sort of thing to represent air. And you could put cone incense in this as well. It's called a censer. Represents air. And then I just put this hemp bracelet that I made during the lunar or solar eclipse last year. So I captured that energy into this hemp bracelet, and it has a seashell that I actually found on the beach that had a hole already in it. So I thought that was pretty magical. So this bracelet brings peace, and I decided to use this to represent air because it represents kind of memory and a sense of taking advantage of the elements that and the natural boons that they give us. And I think that is a good that to me feels like the influence of air this time of year. So next I need the bowl that had water in it. I will put water in this before ritual starts, but it tends to evaporate, so it's just a plain bowl. Notice how these bowls match, so it looks very neat on the altar, having the two. Can you hand me the necklace that was here that has the phoenix on it? This is another decoration that comes that's going to be the same. No, it has a phoenix on it. It's made of beads. It's going to be the same representation or depiction as the previous altar, and then I also need this short red candle. But that's okay because we're still in the season of fire, so the altar doesn't change that much between last the last holiday and this one, between Litha and this one. So we're still celebrating the phoenix, the fire. So here I have this necklace that I used to outline the circle, and it has a phoenix pendant, and I bought this from a Native American shop in North Carolina. And so this is, representative of this time of year, of the season of fire. So I put the phoenix down at the bottom where I put the red candle that represents fire. So, from straight on, a good view of this, it looks like this so far. So we have deity and we have the elements on here. So the next thing that we're going to put on here are the tools of power, as they're called. So there are many ways to do this. So now we're going to start talking about some of the variations. I need the bell, please. The bell is a tool of power that not everyone uses. It doesn't align with any particular, one element. It's not, but it associates with sound, so air, but also femininity. So I like to put the bell on the feminine side of the altar because it represents kind of the femininity of the masculine element of air. So, and all things contain the opposite within them, right? The idea of that, the yin yang, how you have a little circle of each color inside of the opposite color. And that's something that I like to represent on my altar personally. Many people will put the bell on the masculine side over here because it does align with sound and spirit, and sound is air, so they put that on the air side. So that is completely, your preference. One thing that I'm not going to put on the altar right now, I have a chalice. It's in the other room. I forgot to grab it. I'm going to fill that up with red wine. For this holiday, I'm going to use sparkling red wine. You could use sparkling grape juice. You could use honey and milk for this holiday. You could use all sorts of offerings. But I'm going to put a chalice with red wine right here, and that is the divine tool of the West, of water, and that associates with femininity. And as many of you know, that's also used in the Great Rite. So we'll get, that's going to be something that we do in ritual later, and that I cover in a separate video entirely. Now I need the wand and the athame. So these are very controversial placements. Many people will tell you that they go, the athame aligns with air, and it goes in the east. I don't fully understand all of the reasons for that association. One thing that I have thought of is that the chalice technically goes with the west, so if the athame went with the east, then the Great Rite would be perfectly balanced because they'd be on either side of the altar. But that's the only way that I can rationalize putting the athame in the east, because to me the athame aligns with fire. The element fire represents your inner vitality. It's the opposite of spirit active. So it kind of goes with the whole idea of evocation, of sending energy out from yourself. And evocation is in many ways like a weapon. It's like a sword and a shield. And the athame, the metal vibrates in such a way that tends toward action, toward doing, toward making a change in the physical world. And so it's a tool of evocation. And where does that evocation come from? Does it come from the more passive air element? I would say no. When you're making a change in the world around you, it comes from your inner flame. It's motivated by your inner flame. So the athame, in my humble opinion, aligns with fire and belongs in the south because it is the manifestation of your will, of your flame as external energy. And that is how the athame is used. It's used to consecrate tools. It's used to, which is a form of enchantment, right? It's a form of putting your intention into something. So in that way, it would belong here in the south of the altar. So let's move this up a little bit because there's not quite enough room. Okay, so I'm going to put mine in the south. That's where I put mine. Many people do not agree about where that's supposed to go, so you have to come up with whatever makes sense to you. Then you have the wand. People will often put the wand in aligning with fire, which makes no sense to me either. The wand is a tool of invocation. Think of the purpose of wood. Wood takes in something that that does not go with life on our planet, carbon, and turns it into the life-giving chemical oxygen. So it takes something in, transforms it, and then puts it back into the world in a way that's more beneficial. And that is the purpose of ritual. That's the purpose of getting close to deity, right? The purpose is to bring that energy into yourself, allow it to change you in some positive way, and then you can have a positive effect on the world around you. So the wand, a tool of invocation, for that reason, I've heard people say that the wood goes in the south because wood burns and fuels fire. So maybe that makes sense to you. But to me, invocation magic aligns with air. It's like, and that makes sense in the idea of like divination comes, and opening the third eye and becoming more mystical. And, the sun rises in the east. So, your spiritual understanding should come from the east, right? So to me, the wand belongs in the east and aligns with air. But that is controversial. There are many people on both sides, and so you have to decide what makes the most sense to you. We'll have an offering of bread that'll go on the altar. We're going to put that on the God side here in the corner probably because, or maybe in a basket. Do you have that basket actually? So I like to sometimes put offerings in this basket. Right now it has a bunch of sage in it and it's kind of messy, but it's like the perfect bowl or basket to put bread in. So I'll probably put some rolls in the basket, and our offering will go in the back on the God side, again because it's a masculine holiday, so we're celebrating the God in this holiday. Sometimes I'll have more space in the center and I'll put the offering in the middle, but it just depends. We need the life and death sourced materials. So the skull and I do necromancy. A lot of people in our coven are getting interested in necromancy. Necromancy can mean a whole bunch of things. It basically just means doing work with death magic. So I work with the dead. I have an altar to the dead set up on my main altar at all times. And this is just a candle holder that I took a aloe pellet and put the bones in the bottom and melted wax over. And now I just put a tea candle on top. And I set it on top of this cool looking thing. I just want to make sure I don't need any jewelry out of here for this altar. No, I don't. So I set it on top of this just so that it's like propped up in the back corner. And it goes like right here. I also put the small black sphere and the shell full of like gems and money. Do you know what I'm talking about? So this, because it's a focal point for death energy, so I put it on here in case we ever want to summon the spirits of the dead in our ritual. And then I also put an offering out to them. Sometimes I'll put a food offering out in the fall holidays, so including the one right here, I'll put a food offering out. But year-round I also have this offering plate full of things like this is my late grandmother's ring. This is a shell I found in the Negev desert. I have crystals, like little key things, pearls, money. These are shekels. This is a little crystal that I got at a ritual for Samhain. So I just keep them in this little dish, and that's kind of like my offering for the dead. And then I'll probably also put a food offering out over here that specifically is for the dead. Now on the life side, I have the sand and the hourglass and the spirit candle, and then the white celestite sphere or egg. So sand from a really nice beach called Saratoga in Florida. It's one of the best beaches in the country. This candle represents life and spirit energy. I have the idea of like time and order, which is kind of the opposite of death and chaos, which is on the other side of the altar. And then this is a celestite egg that to me just says life, and you can use it for scrying and that sort of thing. So that way I have balance, right? I have a life side, I have a death side, I have balance, and everybody is honored and everybody is happy. Finally, I need the censer. That's the black cauldron shaped thingy. Thank you very much. This is where we burn incense for the ritual. It's called a censer. Looks like a cauldron. It represents air and fire, so it goes on this side. As I said, the goblet would go on this side. It's not on the altar yet, so we'll have to put that on in a little while. And then I think that's mostly it. Yeah, and I might put some crystals out, things that we might use during ritual that would help us get into the right mindset to be successful in ritual. I might put those out on the altar. But for now, I think this is everything that we're probably going to need. There's some oils and stuff like that, but, you know, that's the kind of stuff that you would have to spend time thinking about and preparing on your own. So today we're going to use an incense blend that has rose, lavender, a bunch of very herbal plants that are harvested this time of year, as well as myrrh and sandalwood. That's a very good blend for this time of year, and our ritual is at 6 p.m. So late afternoon, evening-ish ritual is very conventional. I'm going to go in there and start cooking in like 30 minutes, and then have everything in the oven. So as soon as we're done with the ritual, we get to feast, because we haven't eaten all day, so we're starving. And cooking is terrible when you're hungry. So whether you celebrate this holiday or not, just take this as an example of how to read the context of a situation and set up a space for worship, which is appropriate and helpful to whatever your objectives are. The altar created here, like I said, is a permanent altar. It gets redone for each Sabbath, so essentially the start of every season. Some people have altars which are less permanent or have less of a theme because they're more permanent and they never change them. Some have separate altars for, you know, where they want to have the ritual, and then they'd have one altar that they keep up all the time. Some people have a bag that they call their mobile altar kit. When I didn't have my own house, I had a mobile altar kit bag like this, and I have like mini candles, and I would put my athame in here. I have like a little mini incense carrier, that sort of thing. So people have that, and then they'll go somewhere like a park instead of a quick altar somewhere outside, just to make sure that they have something for whatever they're trying to do. Yeah, so, you know, give this some thought and let us know what your altar setup was like. Leave a comment or shoot us an email, join our community, and we'd love to talk about what you put on your altar. We hope that you enjoyed this Wicca 101 Abridged video, and from everyone here at the Coven of the Open Mind, blessed be.